The Glory of Bowsette. By The Dude 3445. Category: Mario. Genre: humor/adventure. Words: 108,815. Rating: T. Status: complete. Summary: Bowser, on his last legs and in a desperate act, decides to abandon everything he's ever cared about. But upon obtaining the Super Crown, he finds a new purpose in life, unlocking a potential that he never before realized by becoming the ultimate warrior, Bowsette. Cover art by Joy Massett. Chapter 1, Bowser's Plan.
All hail King Bowser, Lord of Bowserland, Dark Land Overwatch, and Supreme Leader of the Third Order.
This was it. This was Bowser's big moment. The entire kingdom had come, on his royal decree of course, to Castle Bowser to witness his latest plan for domination of the Mushroom Kingdom and all the lands on the planet Earth. He stepped up to his throne and sat down with a resounding thud, his tail curling around to give his butt room to sit. He needed to get that tail hole in his throne built. Ugh, if he just had a free weekend to get around to doing it. Oh well.
Hear this,
he shouted, his voice gruff with bellows of determination. Bowser would not lose this time. He would dominate.
We are going to destroy the Mushroom Kingdom.
There was no response other than a few coughs.
He continued. I mean, we're going to annex the Mushroom Kingdom and subjugate it like a second-class colony, stealing all its production capabilities for our own benefit.
The entire castle was in an upracious cheer. The Goombas jumped up and down, and the bloopers floated around in a slightly more jovial manner than usual. Surely he would succeed this time, where all others he failed.
My loyal Lieutenant Mad Science Stein has unveiled a new formula, a new weapon that will allow us to defeat the Mushroom Kingdom defense forces with little to no resistance. We shall be invincible.
The crowd cheered again, with just as much uproar as before. Bowser explained this formula.
It is a new type of nerve gas, synthesized from the swamps of the Forever Forest, deep as can be found. When exposed in its new, altered form, any organism coming into contact with it will be immediately transformed into a horseradish.
There was masterful applause. This was Bowser's finest moment, indeed.
We will take all our greatest armies, storm through the dry desert, and delve right into our final territory. Princess Peach will be ours and so will the world. Then we'll march on to Sarasa Land. We'll decimate Waluigi's Island. Diamond City will fall. The Great Boggly Tree, the Toad Highlands, Yoshi's Island, Luncheon Kingdom, the Neuron Jungle, Starborn Valley, the Star Carnival, Nimbus Land. It will all be ours.
The cheers wouldn't stop. The people of Bowser's Kingdom were as loyal as they were enthusiastic. But it wasn't real. For there was one aspect of all of this that Bowser had noticed that sent his feelings askew. And it was not something to take lightly in this. For there was a member of Bowser's legions that simply wasn't here. As always, his most prized subjects, the royal family, were here. His dad Kamek and his wife Camilla, his uncle Psycho Kamek, his 7 children by his first wife the Koopalings, all standing at attention, his weird surrogate clones turned sons the Koopa Kids, and of course his precious youngest child and heir apparent to the throne Bowser Jr. They were his closest allies and stood by him no matter what. Then there were his greatest generals, the military leaders and vassal state governors that led Bowser's kingdom to greatness. General Shy Guy, King Caliente, Tootin' Koopa, Tubba Blubba, Foreman Spike, Rudy the Clown, Don Bongo, and all those darn brutals. even with King Goomba absent recovering from heart surgery last week, his array of leaders under his command was impressive by any measure. And his armies were as vast as could be, covering every inch of free space in his massive throne room and outside the castle. Literally millions of Goombas all stacked in giant piles of Goombas and more Goombas. The Hammer Bros Corps were in their dynamic pose and absolutely refusing to move until he was done with his speech. The Wiggler Squad, consisting of hundreds of hot-tempered scouts that would make for an advance party before the main invasion, were assembled and ready. The Shy Guys were not here, as social situations with big crowds made them uncomfortable, but it was a guarantee that they would arrive when the time was right. He even saw some of the fun mini-bosses he had assembled over the years, like Petey Piranha, Cloud and Candy, Boss Sumo Bro, and even Locky Thunder, that rascal. It would all be perfect if it were real. But there was someone missing. Boom Boom. So without another word, he got up from his throne, stretched out the tail that had kind of been cramping, and left the throne room amidst all the cheers. They were still going by the time he closed the door behind him. There we was, bench pressing in the otherwise empty personal gym while watching a muted CRT playing KNN, Koopa News Network. It was, of course, showing live coverage of Bowser's speech and now showing two news anchors, Anderson Cooper and Megan Coopy, discussing how great and wonderful the new plans to invade the Mushroom Kingdom were. Bowser enjoyed watching state-sponsored media, but it could be a little dry sometimes. Without speaking, Bowser picked up some dumbbells and started curling with both hands right next to Boom Boom, who was doing exercises with an inflatable ball at the same time as crunches with a bar. It was unwieldy, but he seemed really into it, or at least really into the music he was listening to. It was Emotion by Carly Rae Jepsen. It was quiet, and it was nice. Bowser somehow felt relieved that he had realized that Boom Boom wasn't there. After all these years, he was his closest friend, the one who would stick by him when things were strong, and who would cower away the moment things got tough. It always helped Bowser stay focused in the moment, to know when the tide was turning against him, as it inevitably always did. He had been there since the beginning. Since he overthrew Morton Koopa and took over Dark Land. Since the first time he kidnapped Princess Peach. Since Bowser's very first elaborate underground castle that emerges to fly in the air for no practical reason. And, besides the part where he ran away halfway through every time, Boom Boom was an unstoppable ally. Despite the hardship, and the constant bashing of the head by a certain nameless plumber. Despite that late-night drunken phone call to Pom Pom that very nearly ruined their friendship and made work really awkward for a while. Soon, Boom Boom seemed to notice him, as he removed his headphones and gave a weak smile.
"Remember that time, way back in the beginning?"
Bowser asked.
"When we were first getting started, and you convinced me to turn that Prince of the Flower Kingdom into a dog just to see if we could."
Boom Boom chuckled and did some squats.
"Kibidango, that's right. He was such a jerk. He actually thought Peach was gonna marry him because he had some stupid flowers. If that's all it took, we would have been together that time I took over her castle with warp pipes and dressed all my Koopas up like toads,"
Bowser said.
"Or that time I actually legally married her, except it was all part of some prophecy by Count. I forget his name now. Boom Boom thinks it was Count Blick? Count Mimi? Whatever, that time was really stupid and let's never talk about it again."
Bowser sighed.
"I just wish that we could have some real fun again. Like with Kibidango. Just rampaging around and having a good time, not. Well, I noticed you weren't at my speech earlier. And it got me wondering about things."
Boom Boom sighed as well.
Boom Boom told them he couldn't be a part of it, but they wouldn't listen. They are too loyal. Not honest at all. What now? Your big plan, the whole assembly. It was all a sham. Matt Scienstein's new gas was just some perfume he and Dr. Krieger are working on. Everyone knew it, but they were going to go along with it anyway because...
Bowser's hands shook. Everyone? Even his own family?
Because why? Because, you've been kind of... off lately, you know? Boom Boom thinks you're really down about the stuff with the moon wedding going south. You didn't even invite Boom Boom to that plan, by the way. It was kind of impromptu, sorry. I heard K-Roll was making another run at DK and I wanted to beat him to the punch so he wouldn't have a one-up on Bowser Kingdom. That's what Boom Boom is saying,
said Boom Boom.
You've gotten so wrapped up in all these schemes and plans that you stopped being the leader you were meant to be. You've gotten a little depressed. And your armies just wanted to cheer you up by waging a fake war on the Mushroom Kingdom. No harm done, right? What? No harm done. What? This is infuriating. I'm not depressed. I'm just determined. What the flip?
Bowser breathed a little bit of fire out of his nose, he was so angry.
What other conqueror would travel back in time to kidnap his rival's own baby selves? What kind of leader would turn his mortal enemy into a pinball? Or sabotage a tennis tournament for his own gain? I am the invincible warlord of the Koopa clan. Clan.
Boom Boom shook his head.
With respect, my lord. Just say Bowser, man. Bowser, you failed at those things. You lost at every single turn. And you know it. I've won plenty of times. Remember the time I defeated Smithy? Or when I beat up Fawful? And Taboo, the ultimate villain of the entire universe? Guess who destroyed him, it, them, whatever. Those were all with Mario and Luigi. You only teamed up with them after you got defeated yourself, too. And so, a fake invasion, where I was thought to be successful, would lift my spirits. That's what everyone else thought. But how were they going to pretend to kidnap Peach? They hired Dupless,
Boom Boom said.
Oh, he's not cheap. Not at all. Boom Boom advised against it, but Kamek was particularly insistent about all of this. He is really worried about you.
At this moment, something broke inside Bowser. His own adoptive father trying to cheer him, the great king of the Koopas, up from a depressive state? As if he was a child who needed comforting in order to move past all his insurmountable failures? But then, maybe he was like a child, trying for all this time to be the absolute ruler of a perfectly functioning military dictatorship, controlling all his vast dominions with the attention span of a cheap. Why would such an unstoppably lame villain be worthy of anything that he had attempted time and time again? Why did he even try?
You know what, Boom Boom?
Bowser asked.
Yeah. You're alright,
he said.
You're really alright.
Boom Boom sniffled.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Bowser put down his dumbbells and marched out of the gym. He went back to the throne room, where the vast armies at his command had mostly dispersed but were still gathered because it looked like Psycho Kamek had splurged for catering and there were a lot of Yoshi's cookies and tasty tonics out there for everyone to eat. How in the world they were paying for that without dipping into the treasury was beyond Bowser, but he rarely asked of his family's personal finance situations, and he would do so no longer.
"Attention, everyone,"
Bowser said. In an instant, the party broke up and people started returning to attention. All the shy guys in the vicinity left in a hurry.
"Okay, is that everyone?" "Yeah, whatever. Okay, so I have an announcement."
The crowd waited with bated breath.
"I quit,"
Bowser said.
"I'm no longer king. I don't care who is anymore and I leave no succession. I'm going off to my villa in Vibe Island and nobody's allowed to disturb me. I'm exiling myself or whatever, so go do your own thing. Goodbye."
The crowd was silent. Bowser shrugged and left the throne room again. He took one final glance at his slack-jawed family and almost chuckled. He was sure they were going to have a fun time deciding who was going to rule. But it was no concern of his. He was done. Little did Bowser know, but this action would directly result in the biggest change of his entire life, the obtainment of the Super Crown and the utter transformation of everything that he had previously stood for. But for now, this was just a new vacation to him. He was just glad to be gone. End of chapter. Chapter 2, at the Villa. Chapter 2, at the Villa. Bowser crushed another can of penguin proof and tossed it towards the recycle bin. Even Bowser knows that saving the planet is important. It bounced off the rim and fell onto the floor. Just like the last 7. Ugh. The 8th can. Just like he always had 8 main henchmen in all his stupid plans that always failed in stupid ways. And how did Wario drink this stuff? Sure, it got you drunk, but it was nasty. If it weren't the only thing left in the villa, he wouldn't have even considered pounding it down. He missed always having quick access to froggy drink. That stuff sure cured his HP real quick. Once again, he started to cry, tears streaming down his face at infuriating rates. Oh, why did he pick this stupid place with its stupid magical emotion zones and these stupid beautiful scenic views and all this stupid great? Ugh, whatever. It had been several weeks since Bowser abdicated the throne and moved to Vibe Island, where the people were few and the nature was beautiful. Or ugly and depressing, depending on which emotions you were currently being forced to invoke. Or maybe it had been days. He didn't know. He had been drinking so much he had essentially given up on keeping track of the passage of time. Who cares? Not Bowser.
I mean, I kinda thought it'd be different.
Bowser muttered to himself. There was literally nobody else in this villa, on final order of Bowser himself, of course, but he was still in the habit of announcing his thoughts out loud just in case anyone was listening. After all, if a Koopa falls in the middle of a forest and there's nobody to hear them, do they make a sound? Bowser didn't even know if he was really a Koopa. Sure, he had a shell, but pretty much no other Koopa looked anything like him. Maybe this was all a lie too, told to him by his stupid dumb dad Kamek and his stupid dumb grandma Kami and his stupid dumb royal title. Whatever. Nobody even called to check up on him. Not one text message from King Bob-omb or a consolatory call from Platypunk, even after all that damn time they spent cornering the market with tax offices together. Honestly, he just wanted someone, anyone to. Knock knock. Ring ring. Knock.
Oh my Brighton, I'm coming, I'm coming.
Bowser groaned. It took an incredible amount of effort to push his way too muscled body off the ground and stumble to the front door. If he were less stupid, he would have at least taken a couple servants with him, maybe a nubile young assistant who was secretly extremely infatuated with him like in Jerry Maguire, but that simply wasn't the case here. He had to open the door himself, like a peasant.
"Who is it?"
he asked, his vision too blurry to make anything out at first, what with the sun hitting his eyes just as all the alcohol in his blood surged to his brain. There was nobody here.
"Down here,"
a ruffled old voice said. He looked down. It was a Bob-omb with a fantastic beard and a wheel attached to his back. Wait, how did he? Never mind.
"My name is Admiral Bobbery,"
he began.
"I was sent as a courier across these great seas to your beautiful villa to convey to you an important message. It concerns a great many topics, but for one in particular." "Who from?"
"Well, Bobbery stammered.
"It's from, well, the royal court of the House of Toadstool."
Bowser slammed the door in his face. Nope. Not happening. He wasn't even going to bother listening to any of that. It was probably something like,
"Oh no, Bowser, Mario, and Luigi are trapped in the dream realm and now they're being attacked by the evil Master Wart. Help us."
Or something like,
"We need another heavy for our new karting tournament, and since you did grant us a lifetime lease on Bowser's Castle track, maybe you would like to compete?"
Or, even in the best case scenario, it'd be something like,
"Waluigi has launched a metanuclear missile that will circle around the Earth 5 times before hitting Peach's castle. Help us disarm it or the Mushroom Kingdom will be retroactively erased from having ever existed."
Any result from Bowser refusing to participate would only benefit his cause of no longer giving a care about the world around him. And he would continue to do that. Looked like he was out of penguin-proof. Now he needed to get wasted on something else, because as a giant lizard who was built like a rock, he needed way too many drinks to actually feel anything. It was almost a wasted effort on his part, to be honest. Maybe he should try drugs. He decided to go down to the armory, where they kept all the power-ups seized on Vibe Island during the original takeover back, 10 years ago? He couldn't even remember at this point. That was the time that, instead of kidnapping Peach, his Hammer Bros thought kidnapping Mario and Luigi would be what saved them all. But little did they know, they were idiots. Peach was clearly never going to marry him that way, but even more clearly, she was powerful enough to ruin him as well. Which she did. Bowser was a failure. And he languished in it. But because Peach never destroyed this villa or anything, it looked like all the items his men stole from the Mario household were still sitting here gathering dust. He knew Mario was a dust head, so there had to be some great stuff among everything. Let's see. There were a few Z-Tars in a pile. Whenever they held parties, the Z-Tars absorbed the stars that other people had collected, but he wasn't sure what they actually did. Maybe he could, eat one and see? There were a couple mecha fly guys he could wind up and send flying around. That was useless. A bunch of wooden hammers, a cricket pie, a mini mushroom, a whole chest full of e-coins, a frog suit. Lots of weapons and food items. Bowser wondered if they could have used these more effectively to fight against Peach that time. There was what appeared to be a chocolate bar labeled Fudgy. He had no idea if that was a code word for drugs, but it definitely looked like the bar's expiration date was sometime in 1991, and he wasn't touching that. There was a DVD copy of The Social Media Killer, some dumb thriller movie, with a sticky note attached that said "Return to Ninja ASAP." With the voluptuous female on the cover, Bowser wasn't sure that the movie was the type that you usually lent out very often. He wasn't touching that either. Well, for now. He wasn't sure at all why the Mario Bros had a whiskered eggplant, but he ate it without hesitation, hoping that it would get his mind racing with the thoughts of euphoria and forgetting his awful past as the world's worst villain. Sigh. Nothing happened. That's basically what he expected. A lot of the power-ups here probably weren't going to work anymore, seeing as how long it had been since they were collected. He doubted that even the Poltergust 3000 sitting over in the corner would work without serious repairs, from all the cobwebs covering it. Oh, there was one promising item here. Those devious Marios and their deviant ways. They had some reverse shrooms here all along? These babies were rare, but they really messed up your mind, making you move backwards against your own will. But if you just let the motion take you, and with some alcohol it was easy, it'd probably be a total trip. Bowser was just about to take one, when he noticed a glittering item way off in the corner of the room. It was a sparkling crown of gold and pink, resembling a toad's cap with a crown around it. If that were literally the case, that would be disgusting and morbid, but it looked more like a special magical item. And it was one of Peach's. Ugh, he tried not to think about her these days. With how close they had come to actually being married, with how much he tried to show her how he cared about her, his complete failure in everything he tried was just a striking realization in his brain that he was useless. This item was surely a reminder of that. And yet. He took the crown, its glowing aura almost calling out to him. This probably wasn't drugs, but it was a power-up of some sort, and he wondered if. Maybe if he just kind of. Bowser's body shook. Everything went white as a shining light surrounded him. And then. Bowser was in the bedroom. Not his bedroom, but that of his former wife, a room that had not been used in so long he had almost forgotten it existed. It was the only one with a full-body mirror, and he absolutely needed to use it here. His face. It was so. This black dress. This collar around his neck. This crown on his head. Besides the horns and tail and shell, he looked almost exactly like Princess Peach, all the way down to his nicely shaped features. He smiled, flashing several fangs. This felt amazing. Everything was different now. End of chapter. Chapter 3, Enter Bowsette. Chapter 3, Enter Bowsette. This was Bowser's new plan. Using his new form, this new female body that felt like a surge of electricity every moment he lived inside of it, he would return to the limelight. All of those blue feelings, all of that frustration deep inside of him seemed completely gone all of a sudden, as if nothing could possibly hamper him. He was going to take over the Mushroom Kingdom, and he was going to do it all by himself. No help from his loyal minions, nor his family, nor any other baddies from the rest of the world, and it wasn't going to be done from any soccer tournament nor any rhythm game dancing. It was just Bowser and his new transformation against the forces of good. It was like, just by putting on the super crown, a heavy weight had been lifted off his shoulders, even if literally, a heavy weight had been added to his shoulders. Like, damn. He was hot. This new body would be referred to as a name he just came up with, Bowsette. queen of the Koopas, lordess and nomad of the lava wars. Of course, he was no longer a he guessed. With the body of a female, he had become a she, in all but mind. But, since he was still a man on the inside, he would still go by he. At least to himself. Whatever that meant. He continued rummaging in the armory a bit longer to see what could be found. He took the mecha fly guys, just in case they could be useful in combat later, as well as the reverse mushrooms for the same reason. Then he took the e-coins in case he wanted to unlock more e-reader levels in the future. But he also found a very interesting item that really brought him a wave of nostalgia, his old chomp shell, a giant mace weapon created from a dead chain chomp that he could swing around and that also could be made to bite down if you squeezed the chains just right. With all of this, he was ready to set off, returning from his self-imposed exile with a villainous tremor and a climactic showdown. He wouldn't let it be a surprise assault, either, he would take the scenic route, and he would not let anyone stand in his way. He decided to take a new laugh.
Ka 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 ka.
He cackled. This would be the ultimate trademark of his inevitable victories. Before he let Princess Peach and the Mushroom Kingdom consume his interest, Bowser used to be much more powerful, so much more ruthless. He was the one that led a 5-year war to overthrow Morton Koopa. He was the one that wandered the Kalimari Desert and collected all 4 pieces of the Firestone Amulet, the one who amassed the Great Koopa Troop and its great generals, King Bob-omb, King Boo, Whomp King, Goomboss, General Guy and the Crystal King. It took a great many months and many duels to place each of these fine men under his command, but he did so, and with their cooperation, and the power of the false Millennium Star, they made the Dark Land the democratic, free haven it was today. Bowser decided that he was no longer going to be the sniveling crybaby, the sore loser he once was. This may have been the anger side of Vive Island's emotional tampering speaking, but he felt a great urge to destroy everything in his path. Just because he wanted to. So without further ado, it was time for Bowser to depart from his villa. He would detonate it, of course, with some spare bob-ombs in the holding cells. To make a statement or whatever. It didn't matter. And then he would take a boat. No, he would swim all the way to the shore, wherever that took him. And then from there, he would begin his singular march towards the Mushroom Kingdom. For the man who nearly conquered the universe, for the man that once wielded the Star Rod, nothing was truly impossible if he set his mind to it. It was time to go and introduce the world to Bowsette. Wait. One more thing. He probably needed to put some clothes on first. End of chapter. Chapter 4, March to Toad Town. Chapter 4, The March to Toad Town. It was in the Bone Dragon Pit where 3 Yoshis, blue, pink, and white, fell to the ground, beaten down by this woman in a black dress, this woman with sharp claws and a sharper glance.
Chumps!
She shouted.
All of you, chumps!
She was Bowsette, the new scourge to the world. The talk of the town, if the town talked about dangerous menaces. And she simply could not be beaten. These Yoshis were just 3 among the dozens that had tried to stop her advance as she blew her way through Yoshi's Island in search of one specific denizen, the Bone Dragon itself. These creatures were the remains of dread lords that were said to have roamed the earth eons ago, wreaking havoc and destroying everything in their paths just because they could. They were stopped by something or another, and their bones scattered across the world in the hopes that they would remain forgotten. For the most part they were, other than the famous skull beneath the icy town center in Snowflake Lake, but there was a nearly complete skeleton left forgotten deep in the core of Yoshi's Island, and it appeared that this new Bowsette being, whoever she was, had uncovered its secrets. The white Yoshi, in its last moments before passing out, watched as Bowsette held out her palm, activating some sort of magic spell that summoned the 3 heads of the bone dragon to greet her.
"Hail me!"
she shouted.
"I am the Lordess Bowsette, and I have come to..."
Plum swung her club and the golf ball went flying into the air, straight towards the flagpole off in the distance. If she was lucky, and if her aim was true, she would get a hole-in-one here, putting her in first place for the tournament.
"Nice shot!"
some disembodied announcer shouted. The ball rolled onto the green, spun a little bit, and landed right in the hole. "Wow!" Sherry high-fived her.
"Good going, girl," she said. "You're gonna enter the pro leagues yet?" I doubt that,"
said Plum.
"I'm nowhere near good enough to do that."
Sunny stepped up and patted her on the back.
"Oh, Plum, you just gotta believe in yourself,"
he said.
"I sure as pie believe in you." "Oh, Sunny."
Plum grabbed his cheek and planted a kiss on the lips. He took his hat off and put it at his chest.
"We'll see how things go."
Bam! A loud stomp. A golf club thudding against the grass, hard enough to shake the ground around Plum and the others. They turned around. A toothy grin from a woman in an extremely low-cut dress, glaring deep into them with her deep red eyes, smoldering irons in a furnace. Wordlessly, she set down a golf ball on the tee and swung at it with mad power. The golf ball flew into the air and crashed into the hole with blazing speeds, exploding and causing a large tremor. When the smoke cleared, Plum looked back at the golf course, where there was now a massive crater where the hole used to be. The woman next to them merely cackled. Mallow shot bolts of lightning out at Bowsette, but she was too quick, too nimble, too quick, too nimble. This woman, holding no weapons but still shooting fire from her mouth, was almost unstoppable. She had climbed her way up Sky Garden and reached the meringue clouds, a peaceful realm that until now had seen little in the way of invasion or warfare, other than occasional coupling incursions. Now, however, the entire realm was being threatened by just one being. Bowsette kicked Mallow in the air and he flew through several clouds. He was the last line of defense before Nimbus Land, his home. And as prince, it was his duty to protect it, whatever the cost. He shot more lightning bolts, one of them very nearly hitting her, but it wasn't enough. Mallow had no style, no grace, and now, with Bowsette's fist pummeling into him, he had a funny face. He almost laughed, but he lost consciousness too quickly. End of chapter. Chapter 5, Pauline's Plea. Chapter 5, Pauline's Plea. A Deliberation of Kings. Goombas stood with Toadsworth as the leaders of all nations across the world looked over a huge model map resting out on the table in front of them. Never in a million years did Goombas think he would have to stoop so low as to work with the goody two-shoes of the Mushroom Kingdom. Especially never with the despicable Waterland King, whose craven rule had cost the lives of thousands of Goombas over the years. But here he was. All because of this Bowsette. All the machinations in Dark Land had pushed him completely out of the sphere of influence, and now he was essentially on his own, being forced to team with these leaders as his allies in protecting his domain. Pauline, mayor of the independent nation of New Dong City, stood up and pointed with a long pointy stick, going over each area marked with a red flag.
As you can see here, Bowsette was following a set path. She first appeared off the coast, attacking the baseball kingdom and bringing it to its knees in 48 hours.
She moved the pointed to locations on the shore.
Once she emerged again, it was at Sunset Beach, convincing the populace of Kupes to revolt against the majority Mauser government.
Mustafa hopped up to the table in a rage.
The people of the dry desert will not stand for it. She must be stopped. The problem with that is,
Pauline began.
We don't know a thing about her. She travels alone, so we can't pinpoint her location until she strikes. She's too fast, too unpredictable. That is, until now.
She makes a path with her pointer.
For a long while, Bowsette was marching in essentially one straight path. She moved across the coast, going through the cheap beach before moving north after severely damaging the dolphin shoals. She then ravaged the Sprixes, who had already had their land devastated by Bowser in recent times.
K. Lumsey, the leader of the Free Kremling alliance that towered over the others in the audience, raised his hand.
But Bowser? What about him?
He asked.
Bowser isn't a factor here,
Pauline said.
His kingdom is too far away from the rest of this and, according to sources, is currently occupied in some family squabbles. Plus, Bowser's kingdom may not want to help. For this Bowsette woman, whoever she is. Pauline points a straight path from the Sprixie kingdom, through the Toad Highlands, through the Toadwood Forest, and then going dangerously close to Shroom City, where the formal border of the Mushroom Kingdom begins. It is clear to us that she is aiming for the Mushroom Kingdom, likely aiming to take down Princess Peach herself. But why?
Toadsworth asked.
What have we done to provoke this mysterious woman? Well, there is the fact that this Bowsette woman is reported to look uncannily like Princess Peach.
She held up a scroll that contained a sketch of what this woman appeared to look like according to police reports after a fierce battle in Holly Jolly Village. Goomba stared at it with his mouth open. Holy damn, was that her? Now he was interested. Look at those pointy horns. Look at those huge earrings.
Whatever her reason, she was on a direct course for the Mushroom Kingdom, but suddenly veered off just days ago.
Don Pinata shrugged.
The people of Rogueport have no interest in this. We are too remote and not a strategic location now that the 1000-year door has been sealed. We will tend to our own matters. This could be very important,
Pauline said.
Don't give in to your own insular nature when the entire world could be at stake.
The bumpty leader Mayor Penguin chimed in, as well.
Because Bowsette seems to be making her intentions known only to the southern portions of the continent. I suffice it to be known that we shall not participate in any sort of coalition.
What? They were giving up like that? No help at all? Goombas could not stand for this.
You cretins!
He shouted.
This monster is at the doorstep of Goomba village, and yet you refuse to help? What kind of allies are you? Says the one who terrorized the Mushroom Kingdom for years,
scoffed Monty Mole. Goombas had no idea which Monty Mole, just that it was one of many.
Your claim of territorial ownership over Goomba village is extremely tenuous,
King Lakitu added.
Your right to be in this meeting, even, is tenuous. How dare you? Calm down, everyone,
Pauline said.
We have to work together. Because we have no idea what Bowsette's next plan is. She's ventured to various parts of the world in recent days, for no reason that we have been able to uncover thus far. She has been to Yoshi's Island, then to the Woody Woods, then to Neon Heights, and finally to Nimbus Land, only staying for brief moments while causing maximum chaos. But none of these areas are remotely close to the Mushroom Kingdom, so we are unable to.
Pauline stopped. The entire meeting had turned into an uproar, with leaders yelling at each other and bickering and no longer listening. She had wanted to tell them that Bowsette's current course of destruction was headed straight back to the Mushroom Kingdom, that she would be there in a matter of days. But it was too late for them to listen, she realized. It may have been too late for everything. End of chapter. Chapter 6, Chapter 6, I'm here. Chapter 6, I'm here. A few Toad Guardsmen held up their spears, but Bowser swept his wrist gently and knocked them away like it was a gust of wind.
Ka.
Bowser, under the guise of this mysterious new Bowsette, had done little more than waltz wherever she went and still found great victory. Everywhere she went, she had terrorized the populace, decimated any combat forces that attempted to defeat her. Him. He was starting to lose track of that thing, to be honest. It had gotten to the point where, everyone was so terrified of him that he was able to stay at a luxury hotel at the Huckett Beach Resort for free, complete with a complimentary breakfast and room service. He didn't even get this kind of treatment as Bowser. It was awesome. Needless to say, he ordered more than a few able juices that night. Man, it felt good to drink genuinely good alcohol again. From the Sunset Wilds to Ribbon Road, from the Pecan Sands to the Wonky Circus, everywhere he went he destroyed and blew up and raged. It was friggin' great. He had realized by the time he reached the Mushroom Kingdom that he was not yet ready to end all of this, in fact, and had decided to travel a few more places. That was probably smart thinking, too. He was going to be in for the fight of a lifetime with the probable opponents he would be facing momentarily, and he needed every advantage he could get, especially in what he uncovered when he ventured up Star Hill just a few hours ago. It wasn't the star rod or its remains, like he had hoped, but it was a star shard itself, and with Bowsette's magic, Bowser's magic, he could infuse the power of the star inside his chomp shell, creating a weapon that was now supercharged with eternal energies. Nobody who did not directly harness magic for themselves could stand a chance against it. To this point, Bowsette had not yet been forced to use any of the items she had obtained before or during her journey. She was very glad for this, as it let forces continue to underestimate her, and she would be able to take the advantage once the ultimate fight began. But even here, if she could, she would keep to using simply her claws, her fire breath, and hiding in her shell to block attacks. Any weapon or item was her last resort. But she had gained some rather hefty goods in her divergent excursions over the last week. Besides the bone dragon hidden away in Yoshi's Island, Crap. Bowser was starting to really get confused here. He also obtained several interesting orbs from Neon Heights, including some spark orbs and twister orbs that would come in handy if things got too rough. He could shock and stun enemies as well as send them flying in random directions, so they were good for defense. The caveat was that they needed to be thrown and they rested in a static position once deployed, and Bowsette analyzed that the fight may move too quickly for them to be as effective as he wanted. In the Woody Woods he beat up some trees until they gave him a free barter box. This was an extremely rare item, not to be used lightly. Though its power to swap items with another nearby was typically reserved for party minigames, it could also be extremely useful in a combat situation. Finally, in Nimbus Land he uncovered an ancient treasure, the sonic symbols. Bowsette was very much appreciative of the fact that he had been classically schooled in itemology, otherwise, he would never have been able to find all these weapons and utilize them so well. Along with his reverse mushrooms and mecha fly guys obtained back at Vibe Island, he possessed a wide arsenal and would be able to take over the Mushroom Kingdom with ease, as long as he acted accordingly. Bowsette had very much wanted to find some greater power at Star Hill. It seems that after his little attack on the Star Sanctuary all those years ago, their defenses were stronger, and he was unable to sneak out any extra power for himself. With any luck, though, he wouldn't need it, his current state would simply be enough. Now, it was time to advance through Toad Town and make his way towards his final destination, Peach's Castle. He could have used an army. The Koopas that had revolted at Sunset Beach had offered to join him. The Hwumps had sent an emissary to meet him after he burnt down the Fuzzy hideout. His old contacts at the Sniffit Bureau were eager to see his new quest through, as well. Even Game Guy wanted to donate funds to a new insurrection war effort against the Mushroom Kingdom. But he made it very clear to any and all groups that this would be a solo effort. He was going to be defeating everyone, and that included them themselves. He needed to do this, and without anyone else's help. The streets were clear. Only two Duggans hawking badges for sale over in the corner, seemingly unaware of what was about to go down. Actually, now that Bowsette thought about it.
Hey!
Bowsette shouted, his voice shriek and pitchy.
Give me some of them, will ya?
He gazed at the selection more closely. The Dodge Master badge allowed him to use action commands more frequently, but the Double Dip badge let for using two items at the same time. And multi-bounce. That was a powerful one. All of them were so irresistible. But if he had to choose...
Give me Dodge Master.
Avoiding being hit was going to be tantamount to success here, he imagined. Going the long haul rather than trying to a quick victory was the best option.
300 coins, man, pay up.
The larger Thugin shouted.
Gimme some cash.
Normally, Bowsette would simply shoot a fireball and fry the guy. But he was feeling mighty generous this moment, and the sheer gusto of ordering him around amused him. So he took out his change purse and dumped its entire contents on the ground, which was hundreds upon hundreds of coins as well as those brown sacks filled with more coins inside of them.
Ha ha ha!
The Thugin laughed.
Take 'em all! Take 'em all! Thanks, lady!
And Bowsette did. But he did not appreciate being called a lady, not as much as he thought he would. He was a man, a strong hulking monster with the masculinity of 1,000 suns. This body of his was merely an impediment to success, the training weights that intentionally limited his abilities to keep his focus strong. In essence, his weakness made him powerful. His weak, fleshy body was low in defense, low in power, even if it was high in beauty. But he would win despite that. He would win because of that. With perfect timing, a mushroom-shaped spaceship set down right in front of him, blocking his path to Peach's castle. He would get to test out his new abilities on some weaker opponents before reaching the main stage. Out of the spaceship ran 6 toads, each of them with a different cap color. He did not recognize them whatsoever.
Hey, you!
The red one, clearly the leader, yelled.
Get out of here!
Bowsette shrugged.
Or what?
The red toad took out a pickaxe.
Bro, leave. No.
These toads were clearly unprepared for an actual fight. The blue one scurried back into the spaceship, while the other ones stood still and shook in fear. Bowsette took a few steps forward, especially towards the pink-capped female. She looked like she was about to perish here and there, she was so scared. He looked at her and licked his lips. The female toad fainted. The red one, though, charged forward.
Not cool, bro.
He swung his pickaxe and attacked, missing by wide margins.
Toad Brigade, let's go.
Bowsette hardly had to move an inch to get past all of this. The spaceship took off and began hovering in the air, but it appeared to have no weapons because it was not firing. Sigh. This may have been too easy of a fight.
Let's mix this up,
he said to himself. He leapt onto the spaceship, activating his multi-bounce and repeatedly stomping on the roof of the ship until the metal dented in. The bouncing was actually somewhat tough to pull off. The Super Crown's power gave Bowsette the ability to float in the air, just like Princess Peach, and at first that had severely inhibited his ability to do quickly timed jumps like he wanted. With more practice came more control, but he would never be able to perfect it. Still, he got what he wanted. He burst into the spaceship and punched the blue toad, whose glasses flew off and cracked against the window. He leapt out and floated back towards the ground, just as the spaceship crashed into an item shop and exploded. The red toad was now red in the face.
You won't get away with this,
he shouted.
Kaka.
Bowsette laughed, still floating a few inches in the air.
Of course I will. I'm Bowsette, Lordess of the Koopa Spirit. Lordess of the... what?
The red toad was very confused. The pink toad got up from her fainting, but was instantly petrified upon seeing Bowsette again.
Whatever. I'm going to beat you all up now, is what I mean,
he said. The pink toad suddenly stopped freaking out and stared at Bowsette intensely.
Wait a minute. That crown on your head? Isn't that?
Suddenly Bowsette was the one petrified, surrounded by an aura of blue magic on all sides. A deep voice bellowed,
Trespasser! You will go no further.
He was unable to turn around, but his captor soon rotated him around for him. It was that nasty old wizard, Merlin. Probably the strongest being in the Mushroom Kingdom by sheer force, and the one that he was most worried of when he had entered Toad Town.
Let go of me, you clod!
Bowsette shouted.
You are under my control now,
said Merlin.
You belong to me.
End of chapter. Chapter 7, Merlin's House. Chapter 7, Merlin's House. It looked like Bowsette was trapped, with a crotchety old wizard setting him down on a table and beginning to rummage through some old books. Merlin. Nasty little man who had always been a thorn in Bowsette's side when he was the king of the lava world, lord of the Koopa Troop and grandmaster of the magical arts. Now he was merely Bowsette, half-human lordess of power. Standing up to Merlin now was a fruitless effort, because in this form his powers weren't half as potent. He couldn't escape the aura barrier that the man had encased him in.
I am very interested to understand you, Bowsette,
Merlin said.
Ever since your first appearance, we of the Mare family have been delighted to see you in person, to study your abilities.
Merlin leered at Bowsette.
They are quite enticing.
Ugh. This was revolting. Bowsette felt ashamed and embarrassed at the same time. What a creepy shaman he was. He had never had anything like this said to him before, and he realized how lucky he had always been. Merlin raised both hands in the air and some sparks began to fly out.
Reveal your true self to me. Show me the true limits of your power, Bowsette.
His eyes closed as he began to shake and levitate slightly in the air. The aura around Bowsette began to flicker. Bowsette struggled to move. Maybe in this moment, if he budged right, he could escape. But it didn't seem so. The best he could do was rummage through his pockets, go inside his shell and hope to find something. He grabbed out a twister orb and rolled it off the table he laid on. It passed through the aura barrier and smashed against the floor with ease. If Bowsette couldn't escape, then at least he could do that. Merlin's magics lit up the room in an all-new shade of blue, bright and dark at the same time in a way that could hardly be explained. Whatever was happening, Bowsette could barely comprehend it, let alone figure out a way to circumvent it. His super crown began to glow, and the shades of blue gave way to a new vision, a new world where Bowsette, still trapped at a table, was presented with an entire existence zooming around before him. It was like all of his ancestors appearing before him. His biological ones, the royal family stretching back 1,000 generations. He saw Morden, 16 feet high and towering over his enemies with a mighty axe. He saw his ancestor of 5 generations back, a woman of science and magic combined, wearing a large cloak as she pored over experimental formulas and brought the bones of Koopas back to life. He saw a distant uncle piloting a massive airship blasting towards a distant galaxy, his beard as long as a mountain and eyes as deep as a collapsing star. He saw an ancient ancestor, the 10th generation since a celestial dragon and Koopa had found love, and a being so large they dwarfed all others Bowsette had already seen. A vast army surrounded and attacked them, but they regarded them with less notice than an ant. And those ancestors circled around him, hovering in the air and looking down on Bowsette's new body of skin and hair. Morden Koopa shook his head, and the others followed. Bowsette was a failure. He wasn't good enough. It was all useless. There was nothing Bowsette could accomplish that hadn't already been done by someone that had come before him, and done better than he was capable of. The ancestors laughed at him. He was so weak that he had made himself weaker. That was the hilarious way to finally cap off their legacy, fading away just as the celestial blood inside them had dissipated. It was. The magic was over. Merlin looked over at Bowsette with narrowed eyes.
"I can't help but stare,"
he muttered.
"You! Get away from me!"
Bowsette growled.
"I may have to,"
he snickered.
"You are so powerful. More powerful than I could have ever imagined. It's understandable that you were able to advance so far so quickly. Did you even know that inside of you glows the heart of true royalty? Probably not. Your kind was always ignorant to your own capabilities." "What do you mean?" "I'll explain it to you,"
Merlin said.
"I'll teach you a lot. See, because I captured you so quickly, the others do not yet know you have arrived. That means we are away from prying eyes. We have all the time in the world."
He snickered again.
"Time enough for life to unfold all the precious things it has in store."
"Oh, underwear no," Bowsette was not staying here any longer.
"Hey, Merlin guy? Wizard dude?"
Bowsette asked.
See ya around." "Oh, I'll be seeing you. In fact, once I take you downstairs you'll be seeing a lot of me. Nerlum has arrived from Flopside to see this through, and my dear relative Merlavi will be arriving shortly. Together we will figure out some tests for you, to help gauge the true potential of your magical."
Bowsette clenched his fist and activated the twister. A cyclone formed right there in the middle of the room. The roof off Merlin's house was the first to go, jolting up into the air and breaking up into a few dozen pieces. Then Merlin and Bowsette lifted off together. In the surprise, the aura surrounding Bowsette had finally broken, and Bowsette was able to kick Merlin upwards, flying further into the air. Without a moment to spare, Bowsette tumbled back down to the ground and landed feet first somewhere in Toad Town. Had he stayed in the Twister any longer, he would be halfway to Sarasaland by now. He looked back into the Toad Town skyline, where Peach's castle still remained in plain sight. He was not much further back than he was just minutes ago. Progress never stopped. But those visions he saw, they were so poignant, so realistic. He started to wonder whether it was his imagination or if his ancestors truly had been ashamed of him. Regardless, it was time for him to fulfill his destiny and conquer the Mushroom Kingdom once and for all. He ventured past the gate with the huge star embroidered on it, past the Toad guards too scared to do anything about him, past the bunnies scurrying around with power stars hidden inside them. He stood at the bridge in front of the front door and took out the sonic symbols he obtained from Nimbus Land. One quick crash and the entire region reverberated, shaking like the earth rumbled beneath them. Little did they know the truth of the grounds below them, but the Mushroom Kingdom would surely recognize the sheer strength before them. Quickly, a number of figures exited the front door, with two emerging behind him from warp pipes. Each of them looked angry, each of them determined to face the mighty Bowsette and be the one to stop him. From his field of vision, he noticed 9. There was a green Yoshi, huffing and puffing with 6 eggs trailing behind him. There was Princess Daisy of Sarasaland, wearing bike shorts and holding a soccer ball in her arms. Behind him there was Luigi, shaking in fear, and Birdo, standing tall with a bow on her head. There was Admiral Bobbery, shaking his head/body in apparent realization of Bowsette's true identity. He was wise beyond his years but not wise enough to avoid his battle. There was Donkey Kong Jr., which to be honest was kind of a weird pick, as well as a man Bowsette didn't recognize. There was Vivian, the reformed shadow siren who stuck up halfway from the ground, and next to her was Mario, Bowsette's mortal enemy. Bowsette wasn't here for this large group, though. Bowsette could defeat them. All he wanted was Princess Peach, and she was not here.
Is this it?
He scoffed with a shrill voice.
Surely you can do better than this. I am the Lordess Bowsette, destroyer of the waking world. Do you not dare bring me your precious Princess Peach, pretty please?
I'm here, a voice said. Peach herself was there, but on the roof of the castle. She jumped down and floated gracefully to the ground.
What do you want with us? Pauline warned us about you, and...
Peach stopped as she got a closer look at Bowsette. Clearly, their extremely similar appearance was disconcerting to the woman herself, and her show-stopping good looks were having an obvious effect on all the fighters around him.
I want to destroy you and take over the Mushroom Kingdom, he answered. That's my only goal right now. Well then, will you challenge me in solo combat?
Peach asked.
Peach!
Daisy exclaimed.
What are you? I'll gladly accept that, as long as your fighters make sure to surrender peacefully when I defeat you. Kaka.
Peach nodded and took out a frying pan.
I accept those terms, as well. We will.
Birdo and Yoshi began launching eggs at Bowsette. He deflected each of them with his claws, but they still took him by surprise and he took the brunt of the force impact of the first couple.
Cancel that, then.
Bowsette laughed, hopping backwards and confronting the 10 people in front of him.
I guess I'll defeat all of you.
End of chapter. Chapter 8, Bowsette vs. the Forces of Good. Chapter 8, Bowsette vs. the Forces of Good. First things first, Bowsette took out all the orbs he owned and tossed them on the ground. They were invisible to the eye except for the owner, but as long as Bowsette could keep track on them, it would be an easy way to trap his opponents. Seeing as they were all charging simultaneously, this was going to be easier than he thought. Mario himself took out a large hammer, jumping into the air to swing it.
So predictable. How about you go find some better way to settle this?
Bowsette yelled. He activated the Twister orb below Mario and blasted him away. He'd be back, and soon, but eliminating the primary threat fast was going to make this fight a lot more smooth. Now with 9 opponents before him, he needed to thin the crowd out as quickly as possible, even if that meant focusing on the weaker ones first. He used his Dodge Master Batch to weave through a volley of punches and kicks from Yoshi and Daisy, as well as a surprise uppercut from Vivian that would otherwise have sent him flying several feet in the air. And then he surveyed everyone to identify some weak points. The admirable Admiral himself, Bobbery, was a danger to himself and those around him, what with his exploding powers and all, so he would be a good target to blast several opponents away. But it looked like, standing in his way of that was some guy. He had long brown hair and a green cap, but Bowsette didn't think he had ever seen him before, and he didn't look like he was exactly combat ready.
Who are you?
Bowsette asked.
What do you mean? I'm Prince Pine.
What?
What? Prince Pine, of Jewelry Land. I'm one of the Royal Society members. Pretty famous, you know.
Friggin' Jewelry Land? You mean that one Bowsette took over in like 5 seconds and split into a light and dark realm so that Bowser could harness extra-dimensional darkness soul magic?
Why the heck are you here? I was having tea with Princess Peach.
Prince Pine yelled.
But I will have you know, I was trained by Kung Fu Toads at Pagoda Peak for 2 years, and I...
Bowsette slapped him across the face and he smacked into the castle door, knocked out immediately. That made 8. Yoshi and Birdo, teamed up as usual, chattered incomprehensibly in their native tongues. Well, Birdo didn't have a tongue, but her native nasal noises, and simultaneously launched eggs at Bowsette. He wasn't falling for that trick again, and instead of swiping at the eggs to break them, taking some of the damage, he leapt into the air and kicked Yoshi in the face. He floated to the ground slowly but at the perfect angle to land right in front of Bobbery, who unleashed a series of kicks, but not ones that would much hurt Bowsette.
You could have helped us,
Admiral Bobber said.
We were inviting you to a tennis tournament.
Bowsette multi-bounced off Bobbery's head.
Who cares about tennis when I'm Supreme Overlordess of the Mushroom Kingdom?
Bowsette asked in a sing-songy tone. Finally, he kicked Bobbery towards Yoshi and Birdo, who split apart as they jumped away from the bomb. But he didn't explode, not yet. He was only severely ticked off. A soccer ball blasted towards Bowsette, hitting him in the back of the head and knocking him down briefly. Had he not been Bowser himself, that kick would likely have been powerful enough to have caught his hair on fire. Luckily, that was not the case. As Daisy landed, she stuck one leg into the air, ready to dash forward while kicking a bunch of times. Bowsette grinned and responded by shooting a fireball out of her mouth. Daisy leapt over it, but in an awkward, exposed stance. So Bowsette grabbed hold of Bobbery, lit the string attached to his head on fire, and threw him towards her. The explosion was immense and knocked both opponents out completely. With Yoshi and Birdo now separated on the battlefield, this was going to be an easier fight, especially with only 6 to fight. Birdo was next to Donkey Kong Jr., who stood there smiling like he didn't understand what was going on. He probably didn't.
Hey Furball, get a load of this.
Bowsette struck a seductive pose, putting an arm behind his head and leaning back slightly, and that seemed to set Donkey Kong Jr.'s heart aflame, because hearts literally burst out from his eyes and he started dashing over towards him. Birdo followed, trying to stop him, but it was too late. Bowsette gripped a nearby tree, ripped it from the ground, and swung it into Donkey Kong Jr. and Birdo, knocking the former clear over the castle itself. 5 left. Birdo skidded back onto her feet, and closer again to Yoshi, and the two continued their volley of eggs. Bowsette was able to dodge the eggs easily, though, and hopped into her shell anytime one got too close, which absorbed any damage that would otherwise be done. When he found his next targets, Peach and Vivian, he hopped into the air, entered his shell, and rotated so that it fell down spike side down, nearly crushing Vivian had she not been able to evaporate into a shadow on the ground. Darn it, that would have been such a good finishing move.
Why you should give up,
said Luigi, who was standing in the exact same place as before and still shaking.
No.
Bowsette put a finger up to his lips.
Maybe you could give yourself up, though, and I might spare you.
He winked. Luigi's face turned red and he curled up into a ball. Peach sighed.
Grow a pair, Luigi.
She tossed him a power star, and he caught it, but he was still too afraid and embarrassed to get up.
Now it's just you and me,
Bowsette said to Peach.
Call them off so we can finally settle this, woomanoa woomano. That's not how you...
Peach stopped herself.
They won't call themselves off. And you know what? That's...
Peach hopped in the air and flew towards Bowsette, her hip crashing into his stomach and then exploding on impact. Bowsette was knocked to the ground.
Okay.
Bowsette got up, but he realized he was surrounded on all sides. Peach in front of him, Yoshi and Birdo to the right, Vivian to his left, and technically Luigi behind him.
Watch this!
Bowsette shouted. He spread his arms wide and unleashed all the mecha fly guys he had been saving since Vibe Island, flying around at random chaotic speeds and really splicing up the battlefield where nobody could reach him with their attacks. Yoshi and Birdo's eggs were effectively neutralized as each of their eggs collided into a mechanical doll with little damage done to it. He took this opportunity to single out Birdo and swipe her backwards with his tail. She shouted something but it was just like, buzz 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 buzz, so Bowsette couldn't adequately respond to it. Instead, he shot a fireball her way and knocked her into Yoshi. Both were highly injured and just about knocked out, but they got back up and started holding hands. Oh no, were they going to try some sort of fusion magic or spirit combo or some tennis ultra smash that would act effectively as a special combat move? It didn't matter.
Ka.
Because they were standing right underneath a spark orb trap. Yoshi and Birdo were caught and shocked for a good 10 seconds, both collapsed on the ground afterwards. That left just 3, and while Luigi was now on his feet, it didn't seem that Bowsette could no longer move. He was stuck in mid-air, mid-laugh even, and his body was in a strange inverted color. Luigi hopped into this sphere of stasis and began punching Bowsette several times in several places. He didn't feel anything, though, so Luigi must have been even weaker than he thought. This was surely the power of the negative zone, harnessing the power of subcon in a way that few but Luigi himself could understand, considering how poorly understood that realm was. but it did not appear to be effective. When the stasis field disappeared though, Bowsette's body felt the full force of impact from every attack that Luigi had delivered in those 10 seconds. He was sent reeling, tumbling backwards, and then smashed onto the ground, all at once. That really hurt. He got back up, but he was definitely going to have a few bruises in the morning.
Okay, now I guess we'll get serious about this,
Bowsette said. He took out his chomp shell chain, glittering with star shard energy, and began spinning it around.
Let's fight.
End of chapter. Chapter 9, The Bone and the Bot. Chapter 9, Bone and Bot. Luigi had now officially entered the fight, having dealt a considerably amount of damage to Bowsette without Bowsette having been able to counteract it. Mario would probably soon be returning to the battlefield, so Bowsette was stopped trying to hold back as he had been doing before. He unveiled his chomp shell weapon, infused with the star shard powers that had a glimmer of star rod wish abilities inside it. It wasn't much, but it was going to neutralize any magical defenses any of them had, most notably on Peach herself. She spun the chain around, and remembered how good it felt to have a real, solid weapon in her hands, which she had barely done since her fight with Smithy all those years ago. Bowsette was a powerful woman and she was going to obliterate anyone who stood in her way, just as she always had in her life. She may have been a complete failure to everyone in her life, but she was going to succeed at this, at least. She had to. Vivian snuck up to her side and tried to grab her and restrain her, but a mecha fly guy got in her way and Bowsette was able to dodge. She swung the chomp in her face and knocked her out of her own shadow, flying several feet away. She wasn't sure how that worked, exactly. Bowsette once again realized he was referring to himself as a she, but realized that this was not exactly an opportune time to be thinking about things like that. Who the heck cared about what Bowsette was except a conqueror, anyway? Not her. Him. Whatever. Bowsette jumped 10 feet into the air and launched a series of 5 fireballs at the ground, all of them missing the 3 remaining opponents but limiting their ability to move around. The mecha fly guys were mostly dispersed now, but they were also restricting the 3, and now he had them right where he wanted. He landed with a thud, swung his chomp, and sacked Peach away. Luigi threw some punches and kicks but they all missed and Peach pushed him far enough back that he couldn't do anything. He tried to activate the negative zone again but it looked like Bowsette's chomp's magic was counteracting it. All right.
What are you going to do, green guy?
Bowsette taunted. He took out the power star that Peach had given him before, the ultimate trump card. Just as he had planned. Bowsette was loath to use it, but he felt like it was the best move. Using the double dip badge, he decided to utilize 2 of his items at once, the barter box and the reverse shroom. In an instant, as he activated the reverse shroom that would normally mess up his own coordination, the barter box instantly teleported that shroom to Luigi's hand and transferred the effects to him. And in Bowsette's hands, a power star appeared. He pocketed that for future use. Luigi tried to run towards Bowsette, but realized he was somehow running backwards. He sent a punch, but then punched himself in the face. He ran away from the battlefield and that left just 2. Well, 3, because Mario was fast approaching, and it would be any moment before he arrived again. In fact, he was taking a bit too long.
You're a devious woman,
Peach said.
What do you want? Who are you? That doesn't matter, does it?
Bowsette clobbered Peach with the chomp again. Vivian grabbed at him again, this time succeeding at restraining him and touching him in areas that were highly inappropriate.
"Hey, get off, sister!"
he yelled.
"Sorry."
Vivian moved her arms and restrained him by the shoulders instead.
"Ha! Psyche!"
Bowsette now had enough freedom of movement to jump forward and turn upside down, sending Vivian flying to the ground and loosening her from him.
"So guess what, ha?"
Bowsette jumped into her own shell, tilted upside down, and slammed her spikes right into Vivian. She poofed away, leaving only her unconscious shadow behind. Now it was only Peach. And this princess would. Mario jumped down from the top of the castle and clobbered him in the face. Rude. But it was good to see him. His ultimate rival and enemy, the most tenacious and determined man in all of the earth. Mario ran over to Vivian, pulled her out of her shadow, and hugged her tightly. He was always a ladies' man, after all.
"Mario! Oh, Mario!"
Bowsette chuckled. Mario gulped. He was a man of few words, but he was obviously flustered. Fighting an opponent who looked so much like Peach. Maybe he would hold back. Maybe. Mario, having consumed a fire flower, sometime in the past 5 seconds, shot several fireballs her way. Bowsette countered and shot a few of her own, colliding with each of them and sending several explosions in the air. Mario leapt a few times and reached Peach's side. He took her hand.
"You know why you'll never defeat us?"
Peach asked.
"Why's that?"
Bowsette asked with an innocent tone, putting a finger against his chin.
"Because your heart is dark. You have no love inside you. You're a monster consumed with hatred, and that's all you'll ever be."
Bowsette smirked.
"You don't know a thing about me." "We know enough."
Peach plucked a turnip out of the ground and tossed it Bowsette's way. But it was not just a normal turnip. It was a bomb turnip. Bowsette attempted to dodge, but he was unable to get far enough away to avoid the blast, and it knocked him away.
"Oh, great."
There was another problem. Luigi was back. And he was wearing superhero clothes.
"Mr. L is here!"
Luigi shouted.
"Have no fear."
Bowsette growled.
"Why does it always have to be Mr. L?"
Mr. L hopped into the air, and with no explanation millions of machine parts began to surround him, forming some giant machine, a mecha. It was Brobot. Now Bowsette was facing a giant machine. That's cool. Cool, cool, cool.
"How are you going to face the mighty Mr. L now?"
Luigi asked in a loud declaration from the top of his mecha.
"Well, I wasn't planning on using this, but..."
Bowsette stuck his hand out and his palm began glowing white with magical energy. The ground shook.
"You see,"
he began.
"I know a lot about the Mushroom Kingdom. I sure know about the tunnels underneath Peach's castle, that's for sure."
He didn't add that it was because he had invaded the Mushroom Kingdom countless times already, and that he had once built his own castle underneath hers just for a stupid kidnapping plot.
"You see, back in the time of the ancients, in the time before the Toads and the Koopas and the Goombas had taken over the majority of the population, there were a great many species that lived entirely underground. There still are, but it is nothing like back then. What I had discovered is that you can traverse much more of the continent much faster if you go through some of these tunnels. And because of that, I could have invaded the Mushroom Kingdom from right under your noses. But instead, I kept these tunnels for my personal use.
Bowsette's timing was not as perfect as he had hoped. Let's try that again.
Personal use.
Right at the perfect moment, out from under the ground burst a three-headed skeleton beast, the bone dragon that Bowsette had uncovered and brought to his side back on Yoshi's Island. He did not want to have an army. He spurned all his allies. But for any last-ditch efforts, he had to have his own trump card. A tamed beast. And here it was. The bone dragon roared with all three heads, and attacked the Brobot. Luigi was going to be occupied for now. So this would be the final stage of the battle. Bowsette was going to win. End of chapter. Chapter 10, Chapter 10, Last Legs of the Lourdes. Chapter 10, The Last Legs of the Lourdes. Mario, Peach, Luigi, Bowser. That's a pretty normal lineup. This would typically be the moment when those three, possibly accompanied by some Toad or another, would foil Bowser's ultimate plan and destroy his fortress just as they push him into some lava and severely injure him. But Bowsette was different. Something about this new body, this new plan gave him such a feeling of elation and power that he hadn't felt for so long. And he would utilize that energy to destroy anything in his path. Mario, Fire Flower power up inside him, shot forward with fireballs, then blowing his super cape forward to increase the intensity of the flames. Bowsette let each of them hit him, absorbing them inside of him. He wasn't entirely sure that would happen, but he was glad that it did.
Ka.
Bowsette sent all of the fireballs back at Mario and they blew up at him, costing his power up and turning him into Mini Mario. The bone dragon bit into the Brobot with two of its three heads while the third bashed its head into the cockpit. It punched back, but there were too many targets and its fists could find no specific target. Within minutes, the Brobot was destroyed and Luigi was sent falling to the ground, his Mr. L costume tattered and ruined. Mini Mario jumped on Bowsette's head a few times, which kinda hurt, and he was worried the crown might fall off, but it wasn't enough to do any real damage. Bowsette took the adorable little guy, just 3 feet tall, and shook his head.
Mario. What am I going to do with you? Let me go.
He shouted with a squeaky high-pitched voice.
Okay.
Bowsette let Mini Mario go. And kicked him. Kicked him really hard. Mario flew past the castle grounds, past Toad Town, past the Mushroom Kingdom, past the curvature of the earth. And he was gone. Bowsette clasped his hands together and closed his eyes, smiling.
I can't believe it's gone so smoothly.
Peach, though, wasn't having it. She attacked with her frying pan, swinging it wildly, and missing wildly as well. Bowsette took the frying pan and threw it aside. He grabbed Peach by the back of her dress and pulled her close.
You're done, Princess Toadstool.
End of chapter.